You're listening to the Oncology Nursing Podcast, where ONS Voices Talk Cancer, a resource from the Oncology Nursing Society. Through conversations with subject matter experts, we examine the important issues in oncology nursing, from new treatments to patient-centered research to advancements in clinical practice. Join us as we hear from nurses in all facets of oncology care, from bench to bedside and everywhere in between. Welcome to the Oncology Nursing Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Oncology Nursing Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Jardine, Oncology Clinical Specialist at ONS. And today we're talking with Lisa Carter-Harris, Associate Attending Behavioral Scientist at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, New York, about ethical considerations in oncology research, including the use of social media for recruitment and data science, nursing considerations, and how to inform patients about what happens to their healthcare data during cancer. Lisa is presenting on the topic at the 47th Annual ONS Congress in Anaheim, California on April 30th. You can also earn free NCPD contact hours after listening to this episode and completing the evaluation we've linked in the episode notes. Thanks for joining us today, Lisa.
Thank you for having me.
So to start, let's talk about data collection in today's online landscape. Can you give us some examples of non-clinical and clinical data collection?
So when I think of non-clinical data collection, I think of anything that's not really health related. Perspectives on certain topics that may be in popular press today that you might be collecting from individuals through social media. But for clinical data, that's anything that is related to an individual's health, whether you're interested in people who are diagnosed with a certain type of cancer, people at risk for a certain type of cancer. I'm an oncology nurse, so that's my background. But of course, it could be anything related to any type of health condition, from diabetes to congestive heart failure to cancer. So anything that is related to someone's health is clinically related in my mind.
What kind of healthcare and cancer data are we typically collecting then?
That's a difficult question. So do you mean when you're leveraging social media, which is the type of research I do, or do you mean just within patients who are at a cancer center?
Let's talk about social media and how you collect that information.
So I'm most interested in people who are at risk for the development of lung cancer and cancer screening, making complex cancer screening decisions. And so typically in my prior studies, I've recruited individuals who were at risk for lung cancer. And I'm sure your audience knows this because I'm speaking to the choir, but those are individuals who it's driven by age and smoking status. So individuals who are 50 years or older and either currently smoke or quit within the past 15 years and have a 20-pack year history of smoking. And so these are individuals that I've always been interested in understanding how different variables might influence their decision to screen or not, because we have a very, very low screening uptake rate. Less than 6% of individuals in the U.S. that are eligible for lung screening have actually screened, and less than 10% have even heard of lung cancer screening. So I'm really interested in understanding, where is this lack of awareness coming from? Where is the lack of screening uptake coming from? And in particular, variables like the stigma play into the decision to screen or not, or medical mistrust. And so leveraging social media to actually find people who are eligible for lung cancer screening is one of the ways that we can recruit participants into studies as well as collect data. And social media offers a platform. It's just another platform like our more traditional routes to recruit, such as placing a newspaper ad or a radio ad or a flyer in a clinic. It opens up your world to a larger set of people who might see your recruitment ad.
I think the use of social media and collecting that information is just so interesting. We see it every day in something that we might look at, and then the next 4 ads that we see are all related to that item or, something that we have already looked at. And so how that all works together. So if we're talking about patients and their healthcare, what do patients need to know about how that healthcare data is collected and studied?
I mean, to talk about that you have to talk about the elephant in the room of how safe is our data. And, like you just mentioned, when you're scrolling on social media and you might click on a particular ad and then, you start seeing ads for similar things. It's kind of like that Amazon algorithm. If you've actually, you purchased a pair of shoes, then you start seeing a lot of shoe ads. Social media has the same types of algorithms. And so for people to understand that there are those algorithms in which people can target an ad based upon specific characteristics. Like if you want it to go to a certain age demographic, or you want it to go to a certain gender or a certain group of people who are nurses or different professions or different things of that nature. So I think one of the things that is helpful is being transparent about how those algorithms are created and how the researcher is leveraging social media to get their ads seen by the right person. I don't think of it, some people might think of it as Big Brother and it's bad and it's encroaching on privacy. But when we choose to be a part of a social media platform, it's kind of inherent in choosing to have a social media profile. And it's helpful on both the researcher's side because you're able to just show your ad to people who have these certain sociodemographic characteristics, but it's also helpful to the person who fits that demographic because it might be something that they might be interested in responding to.
It's just very, very interesting to me how all of that works. Let's talk about the direct patient care nurse that is listening to us, or a PhD student who is, thinking about how they can, develop a research study that they want to look at things. What do they need to think about as far as initially talking to patients and talking about how patients might be involved in this kind of data collection?
So for the oncology nurse at the bedside, I think being aware that research is inclusive beyond just clinical trials and understanding that there are different ways that patients may be approached to either recruit or collect data or even intervene. For the PhD student who might be considering different research questions, of course, the research question itself is going to dictate, the study design. But many times when you have hard to reach individuals who might be stigmatized because of their smoking status, or individuals who are, HIV positive. I'm just thinking of different situations and research questions that programs of research that might leverage social media, because social media is something that a person does in the privacy of their own home. I actually got into this because I had difficulty recruiting individuals who were eligible for lung cancer screening because of the smoking history and the stigma that's associated with smoking. So when I would post flyers in high traffic areas, people didn't really want to go up and take a flyer or take a little peel off from the flyer because it was like admitting to others around them, hey, I smoke or I qualify for this. But if you can, if you're looking at scrolling through your Facebook feed and you see something, you might be more apt to click on it. So I think that particularly the PhD student or the nurse scientist who is considering either recruiting or intervening with particularly behavioral studies, social media offers a nice platform depending on the age of that you're trying to recruit. That's also a huge thing because you want to match the platform to the demographic of the person that you're trying to target. So you wouldn't try to recruit adolescents from Facebook because that's not the demographic. It's, you would want to do WhatsApp or Instagram. So does that help?
No, that helps a lot. And I think that that's a really good way to look at it. When that direct care nurse, like you mentioned, is actually talking to their patients and maybe talking about clinical trials, then they can also kind of put in there that, sometimes there might be something that you see in a non-conventional setting that is actually trying to get information from patients to help patients. So with saying that, can you talk a little bit about how, this kind of data collection benefits patients and professionals before we go into some other topics?
Yeah. So, I think it benefits patients the same way that more traditional recruitment and study design methods do by, providing them the opportunity to be a voice for whatever the particular target subject is. But I do want to say that, it's really important, whether it's the oncology nurse or the patient themselves, when you are looking at potentially being involved in a research study, you do want to make sure that that is a study that is abiding by all the ethical rules and regulations that we govern ourselves by. And what I mean by that is if you see an ad that is trying to recruit you into a study, you want to know that they are acknowledging that they have approval from their institutional review board, that there is a contact number or email that you can reach out to get more information before you make that informed decision of whether you want to participate, regardless of whether it's a survey study or a study that's a behavioral intervention that you're being randomized to, etc. So I can't remember what exactly you asked me, but it made me think about the importance of really knowing that this is ethically sound research.
That's exactly what my next question was going to be to you, as far as, the ethics behind this. And, I'm sure that patients would get concerned about how this data collection is happening or, what those concerns are. So can you talk a little bit about, how you ensure that, ethically this is being done correct, or, what those concerns are that a patient might have?
I think it's incredibly important that we pay attention to the foundational ethical principles of autonomy, beneficence, and justice. That's something that should apply to all research, not just social media based research, but I think it's even more important in this space of innovative communication methods like social media. And I think when we think about autonomy, beneficence, and justice, we have to think about how do we obtain an informed consent within a social domain or a digital domain? How do we assess and mitigate the probability and magnitude of potential harms to the participant? And how do we ensure that those who stand to benefit from the research are included as participants? It's also important to realize there's this other dimension within social media based research that we need to be aware of, and considering the rights of bystanders. And that's something I'll talk about in my talk. But, a bystander is somebody who is, due to their proximity to the person who's actually participating in the research, may actually be included in the actual research record, but is technically not a research participant because, they haven't provided informed consent. But their voice, words, or images could be included in the research record. So I think considering differential risks to platform users and tailoring communication about the risks and expectations around the research that's being proposed, and then working closely with the IRB and regulatory bodies to develop standards around social media-based research is important, which a lot of that has already started with many organizations.
Excellent. I think that's very helpful and will be, again, good for those of our listeners who might be helping to inform patients and talk about how, they can be assured that that is the case with this kind of research. So we've talked a little bit about that. What we're talking about is using social media for research. So let's talk about using it for recruitment and healthcare data collection. How do you do that? Can you kind of give us an example of how you would go about doing that?
Yes. Okay. So I wrote a primer for Facebook targeted advertisement for recruitment. I think it was back in 2015 or 16. It's in applied nursing research. Although it's interesting because Facebook changes like almost every 3 months. So even though it's the same, there might be different, something might be called something differently. So giving you an example from my own research in which I was testing a conceptual model I developed for lung cancer screening participation, I wanted to recruit a national sample of screening eligible individuals. And so the reason I call it Facebook targeted advertisement is because the behind the scenes algorithm to basically target individuals who fit a certain sociodemographic characteristic that you're looking for to essentially show your ad to, you have that ability. So the Facebook advertisements obviously were originally and still for businesses who are trying to market whatever they're trying to sell. But as a researcher, I can leverage that myself by going in and creating an advertisement about my research study, in addition to like the normal like recruitment flyer type material that you might have that shows as the physical ad. When you're setting that up in Facebook, I can go in and I can say, I only want my ad shown to individuals who are age 50 and older. I only want my ads shown in the US or a specific zip code, or I only want my ads shown to people who have liked certain words like tobacco cessation or smoking or the brand of cigarettes or electronic cigarettes or what have you. You can put all of these different variables within your targeting variables. So then it will actually show you how many people that criteria fit on Facebook. And depending on how much you spend as far as your ad goes, could be because you can set that there's no minimum or maximum of what you can spend. It will tell you how many people per day will impressions you will get, which an impression is a first time and a unique individual sees your ad, and how many link clicks you're likely to get, which is a unique person who sees the ad that then clicks on the ad. So when I'm trying to recruit, I usually embed a RedCap survey or a Qualtrics survey that I have my ad, but I want them to go to the survey so that I can screen to see if they meet the criteria.
You also mentioned earlier on how you identify the types of social media that you're going to use based on the demographic that you're looking for. So can any type of social media be used this way?
Yes. So yes, they can, but some are cost prohibitive. So for instance, WhatsApp, their advertisement is very cost prohibitive. So you could do the same thing within WhatsApp, but it doesn't make any sense from a researcher's perspective because it costs way too much. But yes, you can do this with Twitter. You can do this with Instagram. Instagram is owned by Meta, which is the new name of Facebook, which WhatsApp is as well. But it has the same parameters. When you actually do a Facebook ad, are able to link it with no additional cost to Instagram if you want. I think I said Twitter. You can do this with LinkedIn. I've actually recruited clinicians for a study that I was looking at nurse practitioners and physician assistants and physicians looking at attitudes and beliefs around shared decision-making and lung screening. I use targeted recruitment via Facebook and LinkedIn because you're able to target in on the education level as well as the occupation.
So are there certain types of study designs that use social media for recruitment or the data collection?
Yeah, so I always think of it as either you're using social media for recruitment or you're using social media to not only recruit, but to intervene. There are, behavioral trials, randomized controlled trials in the behavioral space that actually use social media to both recruit and then intervene with a behavioral intervention of a particular type. Say it's a weight loss app or support group or different things of that nature. So you're either recruiting individuals and driving them to either your website for a survey study, or you might be trying to recruit people for a focus group. And the way that you're trying to identify them is through recruitment, through social media, but then you send them to your own database where you can collect information to see if they're screening, if they're eligible for the study, and then you would use some other method to actually either talk with them by phone or set up individual interviews or recruit them into a focus group versus the other one that I was talking about, actually intervening within the platform itself.
Do you think that using social media has increased the rigor of research and your reach to study participants?
Oh, that's an excellent question, because I think that social media sometimes gets a bad rap, because that is one thing you have to think about. How do you know that the person who's responding to your recruitment ad is actually the target person that you're trying to recruit, or are they being deceitful? And so one of the things that I've done, as well as others in this space, is try to create methods in which to evaluate the rigor. I actually have a doctoral student who just finished a study on looking at uncertainty around lung cancer screening. And we had several methods that we embedded within both the ad and then the REDCap survey, including like a reCAPTCHA, so that we were making sure that we had a human and not bots. We actually had some quality check pieces throughout, so people weren't just answering like C all the way down. They actually had to answer questions like, what did question one talk about, or different things. And then we also matched zip codes to the cancer center in their area. So there's different methods, I think, that have been born out of this new type of recruitment method and intervention space, because of the need to increase the rigor around that. And I always like to refer to the core initiative, which is the core initiative is the Connected and Open Research Ethics Initiative. It was actually launched back 6 years ago with support from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And it's a global virtual community of researchers and technologists and regulatory entities who share resources to foster the ethical design and responsible review of research that is around emerging technologies. And this also includes social media.
Thanks. That's really interesting. So along the lines of that last question, do you think that using social media based research is helping to reduce or actually increase the participation and looking at like health disparities and inequities in cancer research?
I think it has the potential to increase diverse representation. Now, I could play devil's advocate and people could argue back about the digital divide, but I actually just recently wrote a grant leveraging social media in the new innovative cancer communication environment. And that was one of the things that the argument that I had to make was, about the digital divide and how many people are on social media via either a smartphone or a tablet of some sort. I think especially over the past 5 years, we've seen an increase in that. But I also think there are ways in which you can ensure that you have more diverse representation. For instance, I did a study several years back and looking at disparities around lung cancer screening. And so I wanted to make sure that I was including not just Caucasian individuals, but also African Americans and Latinx individuals. I also wanted to make sure I was including not just urban individuals, but rural individuals. And so one of the nice things that you can do within the targeting parameters of a social media platform is you can actually leverage the zip code. So what I did was when I had too many individuals that were of one demographic, I would then target very specifically certain zip codes using census data so that I would have a potential to reach a more diverse population. So I think if it's done thoughtfully, you can actually use social media to increase diverse representation in research studies.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And how you pointed out about using, tablets or something else. I feel like there are a lot of people who, while they may not have a phone or a smartphone, they might have, like you said, a tablet or an iPod. Even though iPods seem kind of outdated, there are still people that have that. And as long as they have Wi-Fi, they can get onto those social media platforms. So they might not have that phone connection, but they absolutely want to be on social media. And as long as they can get that.
Yeah. And a lot of times, and there's, free Wi-Fi is used like at McDonald's or the library or in different places around town where people can have access to a Wi-Fi network.
Exactly. So do you see social media research and data collection in the future just kind of exploding?
Until the next thing that I don't know is going to be invented comes along. I think that social media-based research is going to become another avenue for research recruitment and intervention, just like our more traditional methods. I think as time goes on, it's just one more way to reach our target audience. I was watching the news last night and they were talking about an organization that really tries to decrease disinformation and misinformation on social media because younger individuals don't watch the news. The first thing they do is they open up Instagram and Twitter, mainly Instagram, or TikTok and get their information from there. And so I think that we need to realize that this is something that the next generation is totally embedded within that next generation. And so when you're thinking about research and how to include an accurate representation of the population in your research, we can't ignore social media because there's an entire generation that just lives on social media and does not live on the more traditional methods of a newspaper or even an online newspaper or the news or television ads because they're streaming.
Exactly. You're right. Well, Lisa, this has been so interesting. And I think that for those who are going to be attending Congress, this is, being able to come to your session and hear more about this is just going to be really exciting. But as we're finishing up, I end all of our podcast with a few questions, and I'm going to ask those in a real quick fire manner to you. So I want to ask those to you now. What are some common misconceptions about data collection in oncology research?
I'd say a common misconception would be that clinical trials are the only method for doing research in oncology research.
Okay. What's something about oncology data collection that's not often discussed, but you wish people knew more about?
I think, I guess because of my bias, that social media is a rigorous way to both recruit and intervene in oncology-related research.
So what additional training or education do oncology nurses or nurse scientists need to know to make ethical decisions when using social media for research and data collection?
And this it kind of goes beyond just oncology related nursing or research. I think, the city training that we always have to do, or the responsible conduct of research, I really think that should include a component related to social media so that people are both aware of this both recruitment and intervention platform, but also the what I talked about earlier, resources to foster the ethical design and responsible review of this type of research is included and becomes mainstream in some of the research competencies that we always have to maintain.
Okay, and what are some additional resources for someone who wants to do a study or they need to learn more information about utilizing social media?
So there is I hate to plug something that I had a hand in writing, but there's a great paper that I did with the Society of Behavioral Medicine. It was actually it came from a pre-conference session that we did on social media-based research. And it's something that has been cited heavily. And so I think that it's something that would be helpful. And it's a paper that was published in Digital Health called Using Social Media for Health Research, Methodological and Ethical Considerations for Recruitment and Intervention Delivery. And the lead author on that was Danny Arago. I think that would be a great start because it also has resources within that paper that people can refer to as well.
Well, thank you. It has been a pleasure having you on with me today and really learning more about this really exciting and innovative way to do data collection and intervention, like you said. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Oncology Nursing Podcast. Tell us about your favorite part of this episode by leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you downloaded your podcast. For more resources and information about oncology nursing, visit us at ons.org or voice.ons.org. The ideas and opinions shared in this episode represent those of the guests and not necessarily ONS.